And now for something completely different, a car. An ordinary, basic, gasoline, four-door family car. Something that people don't want anymore nowadays. I still want them, I still like them, but everybody wants a crossover nowadays, or a sport utility vehicle. However, it's still an important segment, even though it's shrinking. But here's the catch. There are two segments in the car world that are hyper competitive. Everything is competitive, even like super fast EVs and cars like 911s. But this segment, and I would argue the segment that the large three-row or really mid-sized to large three-row crossovers like the Telluride, the Palisade, I would put the Cadillac XT6 into that super hyper competitive segment. This as well, the mid-size, the D segment sedan.
Was very surprised by how it drove. Very subjective thing, styling. So I know there are people who find it really nice. I find the styling really strange.
The grille.
It's the grille. It's just kind of the sort of sloping downwards face. To me, that's not progressive and literally upward looking. But two things. The first car I saw was at the New York Auto Show when it debuted. I think doing away with a lot of that chrome and putting in all the black bits that this particular sport or whatever variant had made it look much nicer. But it just drove so well. I did not see that coming.
I didn't expect
and
that either.
The steering on that car was really nice. The interior, just the layout, the quality of the trim, the fit, the finish on the screen.
Amazing.
Yeah,
They've
come a long way.
The only note I would give on the interior on that is the choice to do away with a knob for the tuning, and they've got like a touch-sensitive thing. That's the only misstep there. Everything else, knock that interior out of the park. You get in that thing, I'm going to sound like an ugly American right now, but it's a Cadillac on the inside, or at least what a Cadillac should be.
I was going to say, because there are Cadillacs which aren't quite what a Cadillac should be.
Someone's been spending a lot of time saying, yes, it's competitive, but we're going to stay in this segment because we think it's an insurance policy. SUVs can only go up so much, and there's still a part of the segment, part of the buyers that want a car like this. So if we make a really good one, when everybody else is out of the market, like Ford and GM, these guys are going to own more of the market. And really, it's now down to Hyundai, Kia, and Toyota that are really focusing in this segment. What else stood out to you?
I was very curious about the Kia Telluride and the Hyundai Palisade. I like the Telluride, but I like the ride and the handling overall on the Palisade better.
I am a big fan of both. I think they're both wonderful products. I think they're segment busters. I think they go after the Q7. I mean, forget about going after
not just the Highlander
Explorers and Highland. Well, yeah, I mean, even the new Highlander is not nearly as attractive as the Palisade and the Telluride. I would argue I like the Palisade better. Mainly agreed because of the way it drives. The only thing I don't like about the Palisade is the push-button transmission. I just don't like push-button transmissions.
Well, I mean, they've done that for like a gimmick reason, and somewhere there are customers.
No, it's actually a packaging thing. They're trying to make more room to put like pocketbooks and cups and stuff like that. And I get it for the kind of
customers like that. Yeah,
yeah. People like those are civilians that buy those things. You and I are militant about cars. Well, we would take a 992 and drive it every day in a city like New Delhi or New York City or London. You know. That's who we are. Then there's the way this thing drives. Previously, that wasn't a strong suit for a Sonata. It was more value than driving dynamics. But we've been through the whole thing about Albert Bierman. Actually, he's coming on inside the MotoMan Studio, so look forward to that. This, you can clearly tell he had 100% reign over it. The minute you get behind the wheel, like, wait a minute, this doesn't drive like a Hyundai anymore. Like, we'll push it a little bit more aggressively here. It now is closer to the Mazdas that you and I love so much.
You know, we have a lot of curiosity about American cars because a lot of them we don't get. Cadillac as a brand doesn't exist in India anyway. And, you know, a few years ago, I think we used to just hear so much about this big turnaround at Cadillac. Cars are getting sportier, you know, they're testing them in Germany, and there's a lot of focus on just being individual. And that was great because every other brand was kind of trying to be a little bit like this, kind of trying to be a little bit like that. And if you looked at a Cadillac, styling, both inside and out, was so distinct. And then when you heard that the cars were being engineered better and being focused as drivers' cars, really sporty and, you know, great engines, it was very exciting. It was reassuring as well, even though we don't care about it as a brand.
Is it a brand people know in India?
They kind of know it because way back when, In like the 50s and 60s, we had it. And then, it's one of those things where it's part of Hollywood legacy. And so people know it, but that very peripherally. And aren't necessarily, it's not an aspirational brand for India either. But yeah, we've had cars like this.
What is an aspirational brand for India?
It depends how you define that aspiration, but for the most part, it is going to be the Germans at this point that kind of dominate that. Mercedes-Benz has for long had that, but the others kind of have it too. So yeah, I think you had cars. The CT6 drove really well, I thought, in the past by comparison to some of the older.
CT6 is a wonderful car.
Yeah, and we had that in the running a few years ago. I can't remember which year, but I remember coming to Pasadena
16.
and driving it. Really nice car. So I went into the XT6 thinking, this is that brand which is going in this direction. And then it was like we were going in that direction, and then suddenly, for some reason, we've taken a really sharp turn and veered off that path.
It's like going to a favorite hamburger joint, and they always use really good ingredients.
Yeah.
And then they change without telling you and give you frozen patties. This doesn't feel Cadillac at all. It looks so good, but I've got a Holden Equinox dash display here. I've just gotten out of 2 Korean SUVs that have a more luxurious interior and are cheaper, but they don't look like this. This looks amazing.
What about the tactile feel of the interior?
I love it. It's beautiful. The leather top dash and the suede roof lining.
Do you get Cadillac in Australia?
We don't, sadly. Yeah, I'm just so disappointed. It really does not do a very good job of disguising its Acadia origins underneath.
There was nothing terrible about that car for me, and I know that many of us have different opinions on this. Some of my colleagues from India thought that it was actually quite nice. Some thought that it was terrible. For me, it was just blah. I don't remember it for good or bad reasons, and that's not what a Cadillac should be.
When I first got in it, I drove it in Northern Virginia. Beautiful part of the world for driving, but don't speed.
Yeah, I was going to say, except for the police.
You will get a ticket. So there I am. I'm driving it, and the minute I got behind the wheel, it slapped me across the face. This is not good. This is not good. And it wasn't like it was bad. It wasn't a bad car. I could find things I liked about it, but I couldn't help. I had this overwhelming feeling of this is not good. And maybe I'm a little bit closer to the brand because I have so many friends that are there. And I agree. They kind of went into a different direction.
No, and don't forget what it has to compete with. That buyer today is spoiled, both for choice and in terms of where they have benchmarked themselves now. They're used to good cars.
They are. I will tell you point of fact. I had dinner with the chief engineer of that car on that drive. Great guy. Guy literally built his own house with his own 2 hands. That's the kind of engineer you're talking about here. They deliberately didn't want it to drive like an Audi, a BMW, or Mercedes. So when they did their benchmarking, they were saying we want it to drive a little bit softer.
That's fine.
Which I thought was interesting.
But I mean, for a long time, that was Mercedes as well. Don't forget.
Mercedes and BMW have swapped roles for some reason.
Well, that's a whole separate show.
Yeah, that's a discussion for another day. The minute you step into it, you realize, wow, this is light years better than the car it replaces, and that was light years better than the car it replaced. But this is to another level. Like, the detailing is unbelievable, and the minute you get behind the wheel, like, oh my God, there's a guy that used to engineer BMWs. You can definitely tell with this car because he had 100% reign over this. So picking an outlier in this segment, to be very honest with you, is probably harder here than it is in sports cars or something with a different propulsion system, because everything, even though it's a shrinking segment, everything is so good.
How's the XT4?
XT4 is very good.
Yeah, because I've heard good things.
That is very good.
So then shouldn't this build on that?
I agree. It should build.
That's my problem with it.
Something tells me there was, if I'm reading the tea leaves correctly, it was right when Johan left, and it was like one guard was doing the development up to a point, and then I think there was a palace coup, and they said, okay, we're just going to finish it, so forget about that fancy multi-function V6. We're going to put this 3.6 that we put in everything else, and then forget about the tactile feel that like the CT6 has that we spent $1 gazillion on. We're just going to throw the stuff in from GMC, and that's what it comes across to me. I could be wrong, but that's what it comes across.
And that's that's the sad part. It does come across like that.
A personal aside here. Yeah, I love what I do. Very honored to be part of the World Car Jury. But at the end of the day, and I think this is true for all of us, we're all car geeks. And it goes back to that time when you were with your dad. Like in my case, 7 years old. Every September in New York, we would go to the car dealerships, man. We would just get in and out of the cars and geek out about the most minute details. Like, oh my God, look, Bose speakers in a Hyundai. I've never seen that before. Look at that cool switch there. Look at what they did here. And he and I would go on for hours. We'd like take the brochures, go home, pore over the brochures, go to Friendly's, get a fribble. And fast forward many years later, and it's kind of what I'm doing with other people that have had that experience. That's, to me, I think, the biggest honor here.